Assalamu alaikum. Dear students, this is me, Atiq Ahmed. Today we will study the treatment of renal failure. During the last lecture, we have started the renal failure and its treatment. We have already studied the first part of this lecture, the renal failure. Today we will study the treatment of renal failure. We will start from here, renal failure treatment. So whenever there is chronic renal failure, in that case there are two solutions. One is dialysis and the second is the kidney transplant. This is the kidney transplantation. So we will study these two one by one. These are the two treatments that either dialysis will be performed or the kidney transplantation is required to treat the renal failure. Now, dialysis is basically the artificial process through which the filtration of blood occurs whenever the normal kidney cannot perform its normal filtration process. So the procedure to filter toxins from the blood by artificial methods, when the kidneys are unable to perform this function, is called renal dialysis. So whenever the glomerulus and Bowman capsule, which is the actual and specific filtering unit, if they are not properly working, so the nephrons will not properly work. As a result, the whole kidney will not properly work. So in that case, the artificial methods can be used to filter the toxins, the waste material, the nitrogenous waste from the blood. Now dialysis work on the basic principle of kidney, the normal filtration principle, which is performed by the glomerulus and Bowman capsule, although it is not as effective, efficient and thorough as the natural processing performed by the kidney. So though dialysis is performed to remove toxins from the blood of kidney patients, but this is not as efficient and effective as the natural process. There are two procedures which are applied for dialysis, either peritoneal dialysis or hemodialysis. We will study these two one by one. Peritoneal dialysis. Peritoneal dialysis basically use a natural membrane in the body which is known as peritoneum, which encloses the abdominal cavity. Now there is a membrane around the abdominal cavity which is known as peritoneum. Inside the peritoneum there is space, and then inside there are vital organs. So in this peritoneal dialysis, the dialysate will be injected inside that peritoneal space, and the waste product from the peritoneum will enter into that dialysate, because the peritoneum basically contains the network of blood capillaries, and in that network of blood capillaries blood is flowing. So the waste product will move from the blood in the capillaries in the peritoneum into the dialysate which is present in the peritoneal cavity. So this is the summary of this peritoneal dialysis. Now we will study it step by step. Peritoneal dialysis involves the use of natural membrane in the body, the peritoneum, which encloses the abdominal cavity. Peritoneum encloses the abdominal cavity. In this process, two catheters. Catheters means small narrow tubes are surgically inserted into the abdominal cavity that serve as the portal, as the entrance through which dialysis fluid enter and leave the kidney. During circulation, when blood passes through the blood vessels, capillary network within the peritoneum, the dialysate attracts certain molecules to cross the membrane into the dialysate. Now diagrammatically we will explain it. Now what happened basically? Now look at here. This is peritoneum. This is peritoneum. This moving all around the abdominal cavity. This is peritoneum. This is the membrane. Now inside this peritoneum, here it is written peritoneum. Inside this peritoneum, this is the peritoneal space, and inside here these are vital organs. Now in this procedure, what happens basically? Two catheters are used. Now here it is shown one catheter, but here the arrows indicate there are two catheters inside. Inside this catheter, there are two tubes. Through one, the dialysis plaque is here, so the dialysis fluid will enter through one catheter. This arrow indicates, and the catheter is here, into this peritoneal space. So this is the dialysate bag. Here a fluid is present. This fluid is transferred through this catheter into this peritoneal space. Now what happens basically? Inside this peritoneum there is a network of capillaries. So whenever we inject dialysate into this space, so the blood capillaries which is here and which contain the blood, which contains the nitrogenous waste, so those waste move from this peritoneum, from the vessels inside the peritoneum into this dialysate through the process of osmosis basically, because there is a high concentration of nitrogenous waste inside the blood which is inside the capillaries in the peritoneum. So from higher concentration, those nitrogenous waste will move from here into this peritoneal cavity where the dialysate is present. So whenever this dialysate is exhausted, and then what happens basically, through this catheter, here is another second catheter inside this, so this arrow indicates, so the exhausted dialysate will be removed through the second catheter into this bag. Here it is shown, drainage bag. So after some time it will be then removed. So in peritoneal dialysis, catheters are used to enter the blood into the peritoneal space. Then through the process of osmosis and diffusion, the nitrogenous waste move from the capillaries inside the peritoneum into the dialysate. Whenever the dialysate is exhausted, so it is removed through a second catheter into this drainage bag. So in this way the blood is cleaned, and the blood then circulates throughout the body. Hemodialysis. Hemodialysis removes waste and water by circulating blood outside the body through an external filter called the dialyzer, which consists of tubes or semi-permeable membranes. Now we will explain this process diagrammatically. In the hemodialysis, two catheters are used. This is one catheter. This is usually inserted here into the arm, into a blood vessel. So the blood is drawn through it. Now here is a pump which will give pressure to that blood. So the pressure will be transferred to this dialyzer with high pressure. This dialyzer basically contains various small tubes, and those tubes are made of cellophane, and those tubes walls are basically semi-permeable. So From here, through this catheter, the blood is transferred into this dialyzer. This dialyzer contains cellophane tubes which have semi-permeable membranes, and inside those tubes there is dialysis fluid. So through pressure the blood is pushed here. Now what happens basically? That whenever this blood passes through this dialyzer, so the nitrogenous waste are filtered or removed, and they enter into the dialysis fluid across the semi-permeable membrane. So the clean blood is then circulated here. The clean blood is returned here, and the exhausted fluid is removed here. This is used dialysate. It is removed here through this bag, and the fresh dialysate is entered through this tube from this bag. So from this bag, fresh dialysate is entered here, and whenever it is utilized and it is exhausted, so it is then removed through this tube into this container, and then it is removed. So we will have a summary of all this process. In hemodialysis, two catheters are basically used. One is inserted into the arm, into a vessel. Blood is drawn from here. It is pumped through this blood pump into this dialyzer. The dialyzer contains cellophane tubes which are made of semi-permeable membrane. Their walls are made of semi-permeable membrane. Fresh dialysis fluid is entered into this dialyzer, and the blood is also moved through it. So from the blood, the waste materials move into the dialysis fluid. Whenever the dialysis fluid is exhausted, it is removed through this tube into this container, and the blood which is clean, that will return back through this catheter into the body. Another solution of the chronic renal failure is kidney transplantation. Though it is an expensive solution, and there are several efforts involved, because kidney matching is important. Kidney transplantation is a process in which a diseased, damaged or missing kidney of a patient is replaced with the healthy kidney of a healthy person. Now there are two basic requirements. Number one, the donor which is giving the kidney to the recipient, the blood group, the ABO system, it must be matched of the donor with the recipient. Suppose A is a donor and he or she is giving his kidney to the B. So if the A have blood group B positive, so the B should also have the blood group B positive. So the patient and the donor both should have the same blood group. First point we have discussed, the ABO blood group system must be matched. Secondly, now we are talking about the HLA. The human leukocyte antigens which are found on the surface of cells must match between the donor and the recipient. The person who is giving the kidney, that is the donor. So the HLA molecules, the surface receptors of this donor must match with the surface receptors of the recipient, the patient. Otherwise, if that is not the case, then whenever the kidney of the donor is placed inside the recipient body, so the recipient immune system will quickly react to it, because the recipient system will recognize this kidney, the donor's kidney, as an enemy, and it will be destructed, it will be damaged. So for kidney transplantation, two important requirements must be fulfilled. Number one, there should be blood matching, the blood group system matching, ABO blood group system matching. Suppose if donor is A positive, so recipient should be A positive. Similarly B, and similarly all the matching criteria which is used. So the ABO matching is requirement. Secondly, the human leukocyte antigen matching is necessary. If these two requirements are fulfilled, then the surgeon will remove kidney from the donor and will surgically insert it into the recipient. Now, risk and complications. What are the risks and complications involved in the kidney transplantation? Kidney transplant surgery carry a risk of significant complications, including rejection and toxic effects of cyclosporin. Now, normally cyclosporin is given to the patient who have a transplanted kidney. Now, why it is given? Cyclosporin basically suppress the immune system of the patient not to react to the donor's kidney. So, rejection and toxic effects of cyclosporin. Now, this cyclosporin is normally used to suppress the immune system of the recipient not to overreact to the kidney of the donor, but sometimes this cyclosporin have some adverse effects. It suppresses the normal immune system, so there are complications of various infections then. So the kidney rejection and the toxic effect of cyclosporin, these are two of the risks. These terms are usually treated simultaneously by adding extra dose of steroid. Then steroids are given to the patients to encounter these two problems. Patients are required to take medications such as cyclosporin etc. to suppress their immune system in order to prevent rejection of the transplanted kidney. Cyclosporin are usually given to the patients, but to counter the adverse effects, the side effects of the cyclosporin, not to over suppress the immune system of the patient, steroids are given to encounter the overreaction of cyclosporin. Another risk is the blood clots and bleeding, which may occur during surgery or after surgery, leaking from or blockage of the tube yani ureter that links the kidney to the bladder. Infection is another risk. During the surgery procedure, infection may also occur, or whenever we use cyclosporin, so the immune system is suppressed. So as a result, various infectious organism, bacteria, etc., they may cause infection. That risk is also there. Failure or rejection of the donated kidney, infection or cancer that may be transmitted with donated kidney. This is another risk, that the donated kidney may carry any infectious particle or any cancerous cells along with it. So this is all about today's lecture. See you next time with new lecture. Take care. Allah Hafiz.